And my name is Neeraj Sharma. I'll be speaking first for the affirmative from Nueva. Yeah. All right. Is anyone not ready? Adam and I proudly affirm today's resolution that the United States federal government should amend the Presidential Records Act to ban the deletion of social media posts from accounts associated with the president. We define this as a policy round as implied by the word should in the resolution, thus the weighing mechanism for this round should be net benefits. A little bit of background. First, the Presidential Records Act was passed in 1978. The second argument is that it basically allows the president to dispose or delete of records on social media accounts with approval from the Archivist of the United States. Every time that the president has wanted to delete a tweet or an Instagram post or something, the archivist has never said no. Every single thing that the president has wanted to be deleted has been deleted in the past. The third argument is that the law basically applies to the vice president as well. It doesn't discriminate between accounts or posts from the vice president's accounts or the president's account. So the act basically uses the two interchangeably. Thus the plan text or the affirmative team's method of implementing the resolution. It's basically the resolution. The United States federal government will amend the Presidential Records Act to ban the deletion of social media accounts from social media posts from accounts associated with the president. Sorry about that. Are there any questions?
No.
The plan will be enacted through normal ways and means. We isolate two advantages, the first of which is media transparency. In the status quo, Trump's tweets are seen as official statements. That comes verbatim from Sean Spicer, his previous media secretary. That means that when the president tweets something or posts something on Instagram, it basically should be treated as official United States policy from the president himself. This is especially important because statements inherently have meaning. When you say something, you are trying to convey something behind it. So when the president says something on Twitter, it's really important that we take that at face value and look at what he's saying because he's the president of the United States, and misinterpreting what he says or trying to read into it too far is a really dangerous thing to do because you're talking about someone that has access to the ability to launch nuclear weapons, to implement tariffs or other economic policy methods, or go to war. The second argument is that 323 tweets have been deleted since the start of the Trump administration. So some examples of this is him basically calling the Washington Post a really prestigious Pulitzer Prize winning news association garbage and reporting on fake news, insulting Mayor Sadiq Khan, mayor of London, after there were terrorist attacks in Manchester during an Ariana Grande concert. Just like a whole score of really offensive, really bad things that are problematic for a president to be saying. The third argument is that when these tweets are deleted, they technically are deleted from the accounts permanently. Like, you can't see them on his Twitter page or his Instagram account or anything, but they go to this really deep part of the Archivist of the United States. We pinged those two web pages to see how many different views they get. They get a 0.1% of the number of views of his Twitter page. Literally no one looks at these tweets after they've been deleted. They're basically entirely irrelevant, and no one sees them ever again after they've been deleted. That is especially important because if the president is able to scrub something away entirely where people don't see them anymore, that means that they basically never existed and these things just go away. This is problematic for a couple reasons, and passing the affirmative plan changes three key things. The first thing is it changes citizen accountability, because Trump no longer can delete things anymore, which means people will always be able to see things when they want to see them. This increases citizen accountability because now he has to report to citizens directly. People can see always what Trump has said in the past, which makes him more cautious on what he says. Previously in the past, he's able to tweet willy-nilly whatever he wants because he knows that the archivist is not going to say no if he wants to delete something, and people will never see it again if he does delete it. There's no repercussions and there's no check back against Trump. The second argument is that this leads to more discussion surrounding Trump. If Trump's tweets stay up longer and if they stay up indefinitely, people will be talking about them more. The problem with Trump is that things blow over because something is happening every single day in the Trump administration. And because something is happening every single day, things fall to the wayside. The fact that there was these Manchester bombings and then he insulted Mayor Sadiq Khan, basically insinuated that he was probably in cahoots with the people that caused this attack, has gone to the wayside, even though it's only happened like a month or two ago. This is really important for generating backlash against Trump's agenda and halting the things that he's trying to do. The third argument is that this leads to people making fun of Trump. Making fun of Trump is extremely important because if you satirize him as a character, you take away his power to do things. So things like kofefe, things like him tweeting "we," just like the word itself. Those tweets, when they're deleted, they're able to just go away. This is super important for halting his agenda. Things like the wall, things like stopping him from being able to generate a diversionary war, things from being able to stop the Republican Party's ability to implement Muslim bans or other types of policies that are really offensive to the to people and just like humanity in general. Our second advantage is that Trump's tweets are inherently dangerous. In the status quo, Trump tweets with impunity. He basically will just be sitting around like watching Fox and Friends in the morning and just like tweeting in his pajamas like as he's going along. There's no repercussions and there's no check back against what he says because he can just delete whatever he wants whenever he wants. The second argument is that 74% of voting Americans say that he wants him to stop tweeting. They view his tweets as dangerous and they view his tweets as official statements from the White House itself. The third argument is that his presidential aides have tried to stop him in the past. Like a parent takes their kid's phone away at like 9 o'clock or whatever. His chief of staff, John Kelly, actually tried to restrict Trump's ability to tweet by like taking his phone and stuff. So there's been a movement within the White House itself to stop Trump's ability to tweet because they recognize the danger and the implications that his words can have.
But it hasn't worked yet.
Yeah, but it hasn't really worked yet because he's still tweeting whenever he wants. It's like really clear that Trump is just like he tweets at like 3 o'clock in the morning and at 7 o'clock in the morning and like all hours of the day. He hasn't been stopped by his aides. The plan does a couple things. Once again, it increases accountability. It makes him watch what he says because now he knows that previously his aides have been like, you have to stop doing this. People can see what he says, but he's been like, I can just delete it. No one sees it. It all blows over. It's not a big deal. But now, when these tweets stay behind and they stay, and people are constantly reporting on them, that increases the accountability that he has to his citizens. The second argument is that it convinces advisors to pressure him to moderate his tweets significantly more, because his advisors have been persuaded slightly by the fact that he's able to delete these tweets, by the fact that they've seen in the past that once he deletes his tweets, these things go away. So if he's not able to delete his tweets, his moderators know that the thing that has been stopping him from making these tweets is now gone. This is important for two primary reasons. The first is because his tweets are undermining relations with North Korea. You remember Rocket Man? That was really problematic and stunted a lot of negotiation with North Korea that were making significant movement to stopping armament. The second argument is legitimizing the alt-right by making them more mainstream. Him saying things like you should attack Hillary Clinton, use the Second Amendment, folks, those things aren't allowed anymore because the citizens are able to check back constantly and never have to stop knowing what Trump is doing at any given time. Sorry, that is...
Oh, this is a recording.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my bad. I thought you were timing with it.
No. If you need me to move it, I'll move it.
That's fine. Okay.
How many sheets do I need?
2. So it's going to be 2 off in the case, by the way. Just let me know when y'all are ready.
Yeah. Just give me a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Everyone else good as well? Okay, starting my time in 3, 2, 1. We negate today's resolution. The United States federal government should amend the Presidential Records Act to ban the deletion of social media posts from accounts associated with the president. So let's start at the top of the affirmative case, actually, where we want to point out a key flaw in how they've really defined this trend, that there's actually a difference between destroying tweets and deleting tweets. Currently, he's allowed to delete tweets on Twitter, but that's when they become archived into the archivist stuff. Trump specifically said that he has no intention of actually destroying those tweets, destroying them from the archives. The plan specifically, the affirmative advocacy, is banning only the deletion of Twitter posts by President Trump or whatever accounts associated with him. So with that, let's go into our first disadvantage, which is that of deletion power. So the overall story behind this disadvantage is that Trump will inevitably tweet. He's going to tweet recklessly, which means it's only a question of whether he himself can take back these tweets or not. So let's look at what's happening in the status quo, or what's happening in the uniqueness, is that Trump is inevitably tweeting. That according to the Congressional Transparency Caucus, they say that Trump has an unprecedented use of Twitter, whether he can delete those tweets or not. And furthermore, Trump himself has come out and said, Twitter is what got me into the White House, and it's what's going to keep me in the White House. Indicates that Trump thinks Twitter is how he maintains all his power, which means he's always going to use Twitter to motivate his own political base, and he's always going to use it to maintain power. But, however, we see that Trump is actually deleting his Twitter posts right now. That we can see the typo of Kofifi, like they pointed out, it was deleted much later. And ProPublica even has an entire list of all Trump's deleted tweets. The fact that their entire case talks about how Trump has deleted tweets indicates that it is still common knowledge that Trump has deleted tweets. Means like all of their impacts don't really stand because people already know that Trump does in fact delete his tweets. However, we see that the plan would be incredibly problematic because they would ban the deletion of Trump's Twitter posts. We would argue that deletion of these Twitter posts is actually really good because it's Trump's way of signaling that his previous comments were wrong. Trump specifically deleted tweets that were very inflammatory, such as when he accused China of stealing a Navy drone or when he accused Mexico of forcing Mexico to build the Great Wall. These were all tweets that were deleted because he thought they were too inflammatory later. He first thinks recklessly and tries to make these posts, but then he later realizes they're very inflammatory and I have to delete them. Under the affirmative world, that becomes impossible. He would have to maybe go to an archivist, but the plan is straight up banning that. He can't delete any of his posts on Twitter anymore, which means those inflammatory comments will always stay and will always harm relations, which, as they say, is very important for cooperation, very important to preventing maybe nuclear war with North Korea. It's only a world where he can take back his statements where those events can be diffused. Now, our second disadvantage is that of fake news. So the overall story behind this is that Trump also retweets a lot of fake news, and basically people see it on Twitter, and that's how it spreads. But by having Trump delete these instances of fake news, we're able to stop the spread of that fake news. We're able to stop giving credibility to those very small companies that are spreading around this fake news. So let's look at what's happening in the status quo again, that Trump is retweeting a lot of fake news. In November, he retweeted a fake Muslim terror attack in the United Kingdom, and he also retweeted this fake news scandal called Pizzagate. And he's also been accusing a lot of real news sites, such as the New York Times or the Washington Post, of being fake news, actually. So a lot of Trump's tweets are basically if they were to stay up there forever, it would basically generate a lot of traction and convince a lot of people that these real news organizations are fake news, and it would be basically spreading a lot of fake news. Obviously, we think that the deletion of that fake news is able to prevent the spread of that fake news. Otherwise, the fake news just stays up on Twitter. People keep on looking at Twitter, and that fake news basically spreads. It grants a lot of credibility to those companies who want to spread fake news. Obviously, the plan prevents deletion from ever happening, which means all of that fake news is going to stay up there forever. There is no way we can actually combat it. Fake news spreads out of control. You can turn all of their impacts about how fake news is really bad. I think fake news is worse in a world where Trump is just obviously retweeting it and has no way of deleting it from Twitter anymore. Yeah?
What evidence do you have to suggest that when Trump tweets fake news in the status quo, he deletes it or wants to delete it?
Okay, so actually this is an argument that I forgot to read, but he actually specifically deletes these fake news tweets. For example, the Muslim right-wing terror attack, he deleted that after a couple of hours, after there was massive backlash against him. So there is evidence that people backlash. That's when Trump deletes those tweets, those fake news tweets. Okay, now let's go to the affirmatives case onto the line by line. Let's start at their first advantage, actually. They say that tweets are policy and that they mean something. Our argument here is that deletion also means something, that if he said something and he deletes that, that is an instance of him recanting a policy. For example, if he was in a press conference and he said a statement, this would be the equivalent of him recanting that statement. That's what deletion represents, which means that in the affirmative world, they're literally taking away his speech. They're saying that you cannot recant anything you say, which means all of Trump's horrendous statements are going to stay up there forever. There's no way he can take that back anymore. They say that no one looks at tweets and it's like they never existed. I think that's a gross exaggeration, because if he deletes very important tweets, they still exist. I think the affirmative case is indicative of that, actually, when they point out that there's multiple fake news tweets, multiple tweets that he deleted that still exist. News organizations specifically will point out tweets that he deleted that are very important. Obviously, he might delete a lot of tweets that might not be that important, but the very important ones will stand out and will still play a role in discussing about Trump, will still play a role in the American public discussions. Now, they also say that this changes citizen accountability, leads to discussion, and allows us to make fun of Trump. However, all of those are already happening right now. Trump has been a media spectacle for the past 2 years now, which means that discussion already exists. No reason why him not being able to delete his tweets is somehow going to be a unique source of offense for them. And people already make fun of him. But our argument here is that his political base is still strong, which means, and is still loyal to him, which means that yes, in California, or we're in Oregon actually, yes, maybe in Oregon or California, we're able to say, haha, Trump is so funny. But in Midwestern parts of the United States, people are still very, very loyal to Trump, which means that the affirmative plan doesn't actually do anything. It only further strengthens Trump's movement because it allows his tweets to basically stay up there forever. The affirmative only further polarizes America's political system. Now let's go to their second contention. where they talk about like Trump is retweeting without any repercussions. They say that like people have already tried to restrict him. These attempts have failed. That's their own admission, which means there's no reason why the plan is somehow going to be like better than previous attempts. That if White House chiefs of staff have tried to prevent Trump from tweeting, there's no reason why Twitter or like there's no reason why this congressional amendment is going to do the same thing, because it's not even directly targeting like Trump. You cannot tweet anymore. It's saying that you can still tweet, you just can't delete them anymore, which isn't even an attempt to restrict his tweeting, right? Now they say that it will make him watch what he says. Once again, if advisors don't work, then I don't think the plan works. And fundamentally, the analysis that Trump uses Twitter to maintain his power, something that they do not grapple with, because it means that no matter what we do, Trump is still going to be using Twitter in order to maintain his power, which means at the end of the day, it's only a question whether he can delete those tweets at the end of the day. Now they say that like advisors would also be more confident to like persecute him. However, that just simply isn't true. That Trump actually maintains a lot of control over his own White House staff, that he fires a lot of them for being disobedient to him. We can speak specifically Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, was recently fired. There's been a lot of like in and out in the White House right now because Trump wants absolute loyalty from his chief of staff. Indicates why advisors would never really step up to him. Even if they do, there's no reason why Trump would listen to them. He would just fire them. Now, and like on the impact level, I think it's pretty clear how we're ahead here. They say that Trump would like tweet against North Korea. He's going to do that no matter what. Advisors won't stop him. The affirmative plan is not going to stop him, which means it's only a question whether he can delete those tweets in time or not. And we have shown you that he actually has deleted those tweets in time. He usually tweets very recklessly, but then he realizes they're inflammatory. Oh, I'm going to delete it later now. The affirmative plan does not let that happen, which means they make all that nuclear war, all those backlash things inevitable, which means even if you think the affirmative is a good idea, you're still going to be siding with the negation. Thank you.
Okay. Just as a brief off-time roadmap, I'll be going over our case and my buddy's case. We're not going for our first advantage. We'll concede that the discussion of Trump and accountability for him is not unique because that's already happening in the status quo. The problem is that they really mishandle our second advantage. The scenario that we're presenting here is very nuanced. The argument is that in the status quo, there's a lot of pressure for Trump to stop tweeting. There's a lot of pressure for like regulations or some sort of like constraint to be placed on his ability. In fact, these regulations were actually implemented for a couple days after he tweeted something really inflammatory and potentially legally incriminating about firing Mike Flynn as Secretary of Defense. The problem is that he just broke through this because there wasn't a significant enough backlash. The issue here is that we've also isolated that 74% of voters, including a lot of Trump's base, really want him to stop tweeting because they think this is dangerous, they think it harms the international community, which is a scenario that they have also conceded. The argument is that because there was a lot of pressure in the status quo, we just need a bit more backlash to push him over the edge into actually moderating his tweets, moderating the things he says, and preventing these things from actually being discussed. Let's go on to the line by line of the arguments. First of all, they've conceded that Trump tweets with impunity. Right now, there aren't a lot of serious repercussions because he can just delete tweets and they disappear from the 24-hour news cycle. This is the analysis that Nadia makes because he can just delete tweets, they don't stay up, no one looks at them, they're not there anymore, which means that whether or not Trump deletes something has a significant impact on whether or not someone sees it. Next, they've conceded that 74% of people want him to stop, and his advisors have literally implemented procedures to stop him that almost worked and just barely failed. The argument is really simple. It's that if he can't delete his tweets, the backlash arguments that they're talking about how people force him to delete tweets in the past, that backlash will still exist. He'll tweet one or two more inflammatory things, realize that he has no ability to control his backlash, and then self-moderate and begin to stop tweeting. Also, the analysis that Nadia makes is that Trump is chronically obsessed with his image. He is super, super self-conscious and focused on how he plays in the media. If he sees that he tweets a bunch of things, can't delete them, and they stay around the 24-hour news cycle, which they survive through that, which they've conceded will happen, that means that he will see those things as damaging to his image and will stop doing them. Yeah.
So if he's not allowed to tweet anymore to get his opinion out, how do you think he would actually convey his opinion, or would he just be a president without opinions anymore?
He's completely allowed to tweet. It's a question of the content of the things he tweets, right? We don't argue this is going to stop him from tweeting. We argue this will have a moderating influence on the kinds of things he tweets, right? Qualitatively, he's going to be less likely to say super inflammatory, directly insulting things about the leader of North Korea, right? He'll still tweet policy positions about North Korea, but he just won't do it in such a way that's so inflammatory that it damages his image, which he is incredibly narcissistically obsessed with. Next, they've conceded that there's a ton of pressure from advisors that is almost successful, and that will probably also act as a moderating influence on the kinds of things he tweets. Then, on the impact level, the most significant impact here is that it undermines relations with North Korea. This undermines like negotiations that will potentially stop the development of nuclear weapons, potentially stop the escalation of conflict, as well as small-scale clashes with North Korea and South Korea. They can see that these negotiations are very likely to be successful in the status quo. It's only a question of whether or not he risks that by more tweets. Also, they've also conceded that he legitimized the alt-right when he's able to tweet anti-Semitic memes or racist memes on his Twitter account. What that means is that there's a huge amount of backlash from groups, from donors of his that are parts of those groups, which means that when he's no longer able to delete those tweets, he'll just stop tweeting things like that or have someone moderate that influence. This is also connected to the rise in hate crimes under Trump. The Trump administration has led to a 5% rise in hate crimes, and 20% of all South Asian people that were affected by hate crimes, Trump was invoked somehow, which means that there is a very significant impact to hate crimes, which means that if he stops tweeting these things, that will lead to a direct decrease in like calls for violence and hate crimes, which is a significant impact in today's debate. Next, moving on to my opponent's disadvantage. The fundamental problem with this disadvantage is that policymakers view Trump's tweets very differently than average people, right? Average people look on Twitter and like browse through it. Rather, a policymaker is going to see Trump's tweet and they're not going to just forget it because he deleted it, right? They don't assume that just because Trump deletes something that changes his mind. If North Korea can go look at this archive that is publicly accessible, find the tweet that Trump said about his policy, they'll know exactly what it is. People in North Korea, people in Russia and China are monitoring Trump's Twitter account and like finding out about his policy, right? They're not gonna just completely forget about whatever Trump said the moment he deleted it. That's why this disadvantage is sort of ridiculous. Next, under the line. First of all, like China, North Korea, Russia, they all have people working in them that are smart. They get that Trump's tweeting. They're just going to look at his tweets, monitor them. Even if he deletes them, they're still going to have known what he said. They're not just going to forget about it, which means that they don't access any link, and it's a disadvantage. Second, just because Trump deletes a tweet, that doesn't mean he apologized for it. I'm pretty sure, again, all these policymakers are smart, cool, calculated people. They probably know that it doesn't mean that he's changed his position. Rather, it means that there are just political costs associated with doing it that caused him to renege. Yes?
If policymakers are smart, cool, and calculated, wouldn't they realize that Trump's tweets were inflammatory and not react anyway?
No, they think that Trump's tweets are real, right?
Yeah.
So the argument is that they take Trump's tweets seriously. Like, they think that is an indication of, to some extent, how he's feeling or how his opinion is, right? Because we know he just tweets off the cuff what he's thinking at any given moment. They know that. They know that just because he deletes it, that's probably because of the political costs associated with it, not because he had some fundamental shift of his worldview due to like a couple negative media stories. Rather, it's all about his image. That's like the key question here. Third, again, once he's tweeted something, it's too late. The only hope is that we reduce the volume of tweets or reduce qualitatively how bad they are. Once it's been tweeted, people in policy-making positions in these other countries will just find the tweets and know what he said and know what he really thinks. Fourth, if he is able to delete tweets, that creates a more ambiguous position, which creates more uncertainty, which makes it a lot harder for other policymakers to predict, and probably, if anything, increases the chance of war because they don't know what he actually thinks, even if they're right even if the thesis of their disadvantage is true. Next, on to fake news. The biggest issue here is, of course, that Trump is not the only source of fake news. If I'm a right-wing person who's active on Twitter and I follow Donald Trump, I also probably follow a lot of other right-wing commentators, pundits, people of that nature that will also probably tweet really high volumes of fake news. So when I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed, and just because Trump hasn't tweeted something or retweeted something, I can still see other right-wing people that I follow that will tweet these fake news stories, which means that the group of people that look at Trump's fake news also probably have tons of other sources where they receive mass amounts of fake news on a daily basis, which means that the link that they're isolating into fake news is probably incredibly small and incredibly not unique compared to all the other sources of fake news that people are constantly inundated with. Next, onto the line-by-line disadvantage. First of all, backlash will probably stop fake news. In cases where Trump has tweeted articles about fake news about terrorist attack happening that did not actually happen, or insulting the mayor of London, right? Because there's so much backlash, because a lot of his donors who might be Jewish might react negatively to anti-Semitic articles, etc., right? Like, those people will probably he'll recognize that there's a backlash there. People in his party, his advisors, will convince him to stop tweeting like those openly anti-Semitic or openly racist things, and will probably lead to a decrease in qualitatively how bad they are, and probably to quantitatively a decrease in the volume of fake news that is being tweeted. So in other words, the affirmative probably resolves the link to the disadvantage a lot better than the negative. Second, this is non-unique. There are tons of other alt-right people in the alt-right. They follow tons of other pundits, have tons of other sources of fake news. They all watch Fox News, right? Those are all massive alternative causes to the disadvantage. Third, the worst part is that they've isolated no unique impact to this argument. Sure, fake news happens all the time. They haven't proven that fake news actually influences people's positions, or that it actually changed people's opinions, right? If I'm the sort of person that's just going to blindly believe whatever Trump says, and he tweets a fake news article, I was probably going to vote for Trump anyways if I was going to believe it, right? How does that really bias anyone in favor of Trump? That analysis does not make a lot of sense. Fourth, fake news has been around for a really long time. It's been around for thousands of years. It's been around all throughout democracy, political campaigns, since ancient Greece. I'm sure people have been lying about their opponents, lying about the way the elections are working, right? Fake news has always been around. It's always going to be part of our democracy. They haven't really isolated any reasons why banning Trump from deleting these tweets makes it so much worse, right? They're really not doing enough work here for you to vote on this. How do you? There we go.
The order is going to be the second advantage and then the negative case in order. All right, everybody good? You can flow the overview on probably the top right corner of this sheet because that's where a lot of stuff can go. All right. We are going to prove to you that Trump will always retweet and tweet bad things, and he will not stop no matter what his advisors are doing, which means this round comes down to a question of what are we able to do with these tweets, and how can we perceptually make these tweets less damaging? How can we stop the influence that they have? Because again, they tell you that these tweets are seen as official presidential statements. So now this round comes down to a question of, are we going to keep the official statements that are bad and inflammatory on the internet for everyone in the world to see, or are we going to see it as Trump recanting a statement? We are telling you that the deletion of a tweet is pretty much the same thing as recanting and saying, no, I was wrong at a press conference. These are functionally the same thing. So when they tell you that people take his statements as official statements right now, you should also believe the analysis that when he deletes a tweet, policymakers are also going to see it as a recanting of the statement of him saying, oh, that was probably a bad tweet, a bad statement, a bad official position. If you're going to give them access to this is an official position when he tweets, you should also similarly give us access to this analysis. Let's go to the specific danger advantage. And I think there are a few reasons that we're winning why they're not going to be able to gain access to this. The first is that we're going to prove to you that he will always tweet regardless. He will always tweet regardless because they are conceding the analysis that Trump recognizes that his Twitter is literally what got him into the White House. He sees Twitter as uniquely key to actually maintaining his power, maintaining the support of his base, which is another conceded argument. His base is fundamentally locked around his Twitter account. And the second argument is also going to be that he hates his current White House press team. He hates his advisors. This is another conceded piece of analysis as to how he currently fires anyone that tries to stop him. He fired Rex Tillerson when he went against him. He fires his advisors whenever they try to control him. That's another indication why he will never stop tweeting bad ideas when his advisors tell him, stop, no. Then, in addition, if you look at the alternative, whether it's tweets versus press conference, I think Trump is always going to be taking the path of tweets instead, because he has proven time and time again he has no confidence in his press team. He has specifically reduced the number of press conferences that there have been. He despises his press team because he has no personal control over this. He wants control over what he says, and that's why he uses Twitter. The third is going to be that, obviously, he hates his advisors, which means advisors don't check. All these are reasons as to why he would always tweet regardless of what happens if the plan passes, all these things. They might try and tell you that 70% of his supporters or 70% of the American people want him to stop. But this is non-interactive with the argument that Trump uniquely himself views it as keeping him in the White House, and also he hates his advisors. So it doesn't matter what the people of the U.S. want, what his supporters want. It's him viewing himself as, this is what is my power, this is what I want, this is what I'm doing. So he will always tweet. Now, he will also always tweet bad things. I think there are additional answers here, and the link that they're going for about how now he will moderate his content is simply not going to function for a few reasons. Look at the link about how they say he will now moderate content because he knows that there is backlash. First, you can probably extend their own analysis that Trump tweets recklessly while in his PJs while watching Fox and Friends. That's their own analysis that indicates that he will probably always be recklessly tweeting random things that pop up in his head at 5 a.m. in the morning while he's downing Cheetos. The second is going to be the political base argument. The political base, once again, goes conceded. He views that his political base is surrounded and covered with his Twitter tweets. He views his inflammatory comments as riling up and supporting and generating support from his political base. What he views that when he tweets these inflammatory comments, he's riling up support for his policies of anti-China, of anti-Mexico. He's riling up support for all these inflammatory responses, which means that when he loves his political base, and his political base is attached to his Twitter, he will always be tweeting this bad content because he views this bad content as good stuff. The only thing checking back for these bad tweets and allowing him to delete it right now is the backlash where you're seeing. But even if there's backlash now, with the plan passing, he can't delete it anymore. Our argument is you should keep letting him delete it. I'll get on to why that's important in the case. But third is the question of his image. They tell you themselves that he's very concerned with his image, which is another indication that that's an argument in our favor as to why he would always retaliate instantaneously and not go through any of his advisors, not think through anything logically before saying, oh, I'm going to just tweet something really randomly to inflame relations with China, start a trade war, start like decrease talks with North Korea. He's very concerned about his image, and that's all. These are all conceded. Like these are all arguments that run in our favor. I think we are winning a lot of these cross applications from the uniqueness under the disadvantage. Two reasons as to why how he would always tweet and how he would always tweet badly. They're simply not interacting with us enough on this question of what will he tweet. The I will somehow moderate content now is not enough to answer the argument that he is reckless and will always tweet like this. With that, I think we are gaining access to all of the advantages because only through deleting the content, viewing it as an official recantment of the statement, will you actually ever be able to solve for this. Let's go to the disadvantages. First, we're going to be deletion power. And they say, they make these very contradictory statements in answering this. They say policymakers view Trump's tweets as official statements, but then they say policymakers don't believe he recants when he's deleting it. Our argument is that it is, one, viewed as an official recantment, but second, the existence of the tweet itself is like the cause of a bunch of tensions. If he deletes these tweets, he's able to resolve these tensions. Most policymakers know that he might not like their country or might not like them, but the existence of the tweet itself is like a symbol of aggression, is a symbol of aggression that Trump is going to take action, and this is what is causing a bunch of miscalculation right now with these policymakers. Our argument is that without the deletion of this, backlash will never be able to check back because, again, he tweets recklessly. Only with backlash in the status quo plus the allowing of deletion will he actually be able to stop this sign of aggression through Twitter and resolve all the impacts. That gives us access to a lot of the links. So I think you're going to give us access to the impacts about how this is able to turn case because now we are pretty much allowing for the decreased possibility of like destroying cooperation on the impacts level and destroying cooperation with other countries. Then they say that people will know what he said anyways. Deletion doesn't matter. Again, you should give us the analysis that it's viewed as an official encampment. They go for the analysis that it's an official statement. I think these are probably the same type of analysis. Policymakers have to either view it one way or the other. If they view it the other way, you can't even give them access to their entire advantage in the first place. Next, they say that backlash is always able to check back, and he would just control himself with backlash. I think we already properly answered this argument as to how the backlash is always coming after the tweet, which means it's critical that we're able to delete the tweet and stop all of the like breaking down of tensions when he poses like this posture of aggression towards other countries, towards like China for like accusing them of stealing a research drone or other things. It is crucial. They say backlash is able to check back. No, backlash is not able to check back in their plan. It's only able to check back right now when the backlash happens from like the entire world saying, no, you can't do this, and then he deletes it afterwards. Backlash in their world comes, but everyone already is going to keep saying this tweet, keep inflaming tensions, keep escalating until things get really, really bad. I think that's their own impact scenario that they're going for. You could also extend across our impact scenario. Next on the issue of fake news. I think there's not enough work here because they say that the only big response that they make here is that the followers of Trump are already following other right-wing organizations. However, Trump's follower and the POTUS account follower count is infinitely larger than like some random right-wing news organization that's going to just be spewing out random like fake news stuff. And we can also see that the presidential account is a lot more visible in the question of what like accounts are viewed, what accounts are going to be like most likely followed. I think these are all indications as to why we should stop the presidential tweeting and deleting. We should start deleting the issue of fake news. They say that fake news has always existed. It's a question of how we handle it now. I think we should handle it better. It's not a question of if it always exists. It's a question of how we handle it. Again, remember, deleting a tweet is essentially like pretty much recanting the statement, decreasing the posture of aggression. That's what we're going for. He's always going to tweet.
Yeah, this one. It's going to be an overview, then like a deletion disadvantage. I think it should be pretty clear based on what I'm saying. Is everybody ready?
Just the first to say.
Yeah. Okay, that I'll start in my time now. Sadly for the affirmation, Trump does not play by the rules. They don't really understand this. The AF tries to control a force that, one, cannot be controlled, and two, people are already trying to control them, and their White House chief of staff. If they can't control Trump, neither can we. This debate comes down very, very simply. Trump tweets despite backlash, and we all agree that those tweets are bad, which means it's only a question of whether he can delete those tweets or not. So there are a couple of arguments that I want to highlight on our deletion disadvantage. The first is that Trump will always tweet and it will always be reckless. I have two very compelling reasons for you to believe this. The first is that you don't actually have to believe me or my partner or even my opponents. You should be believing the Congressional Transparency Caucus. That's literally their own actor, the United States federal government, having conceded defeat, saying that Trump's tweeting is unprecedented. There's nothing we can do to check it back anymore. If you don't believe them, you can even believe Trump himself, who has come out and said that Twitter is what got me into the White House. He believes it is key to his power. It's Twitter or nothing for him, which means the affirmative only makes Twitter a far more dangerous battleground for the entire world, right? These are all indications why Trump is always going to be using Twitter. He's always going to be using it to secure his own power. But secondly is the political base analysis that was conceded out of my first speech. It's very easy for us to say, oh, haha, no one would ever support Trump, right? Ha, he's so funny. But there are people that do support Trump in like Midwestern states or whatever. There are people that they even point out, the alt-right people that would still follow fake news, still follow a lot of alt-right news accounts that still believe in Trump. That is the base that is loyal to Trump, and that is the base that Trump is going to be pandering to, which means he is always going to be making those reckless tweets. He's always going to be tweeting for that group that actually devours all the information that Trump is trying to like pander to everybody, right? That is the base that he is pandering to. Now, the second argument that I want to highlight is that only deletion is able to solve this. I'm sorry, they do not have a lot of argumentation here. Most importantly, they have not outlined a specific difference between tweeting and deleting a tweet, because that is functionally the inverse of one of that, because they're basically the same thing. It's like if I said something and then I take it back, that would be treated just as seriously as the original statement. If I say, you are dumb, and then I say, I'm sorry, no, you're not dumb. That is basically what deleting the tweet does, right? That is still something that policymakers, which they say are smart, cool, and calculated, they would recognize deleted tweets as something that still matters in the international sphere. Okay, now the final argument I want to highlight here is that there is not going to be any backlash or moderation that solves for Trump's reckless tweeting, because I guarantee you this is what Niraj is going to go for, but it is sadly just wrong. First is the framing. They're trying to paint you a very pretty picture here, but they're only hiding to you how hopeless the entire White House situation is right now. Backlash already happened. Now, Adam, he tries to come up here and tell you, like, oh, we had a lot of backlash. We were very, very close. That is not what it means. The fact that backlash has already happened is a reason why Trump is not listening to backlash. It's a reason why further backlash isn't going to work anymore. You should really pay attention to the actual things that they're saying. They're saying backlash already happened. Oh, maybe if we have more backlash, something will change. That is very hopeless, because if backlash already happened, it means it's ineffective. But even if you think that some amount of backlash will be able to prevent Trump from doing things, I think time frame flows in our side. Backlash happens after the tweet comes, which means the tweet has already come, the damage has already been done, backlash comes in too late to solve that, which means it's only a question of whether he can delete these tweets. And I think this is very crucial here, because when they read high-magnitude nuclear war scenarios with North Korea, I think they've really shot themselves in the foot, because even one dangerous tweet that doesn't get deleted means it's game over for them. Nuclear war means we do not have time for Trump to slowly change his behavior after seeing lots of backlash from the public. Right, which means that ultimately we come ahead on all the impacts. We say that deleting tweets is the only way we can prevent international relations from spiraling out of control. It's the only way fake news can actually be prevented, because backlash just does not come fast enough. Thank you.
The order is going to be an overview, which you can flow in the top right corner of Advantage 2, which I believe is where, right under where Ryan said you could flow his Advantage overview, followed by Advantage 2 proper, followed by Deletion Tower. Any questions?
I should do this.
Can you repeat that, please? Sorry.
Yeah, Advantage 2 Deletion Power Fake News with the overview on top. Yes, 5 minutes. You guys good?
Yeah.
Is anyone not ready? Okay, my hand represents the level of tension within the United States and the amount of backlash that is being held against Trump. Here's what happens in the status quo where you're able to delete tweets. Trump says something inflammatory. Tensions go up. He deletes it. They go down. Trump says something inflammatory again. They go up. He deletes it. They go down. But if you want Trump to change his action and change what he's doing, what you need to have happen is you need to have backlash against Trump increase consistently to the point that he gets voted out of office. You need backlash against Trump to increase to the point that his advisors are pressuring him, pleading with him, begging him more than they ever have before so that he stops tweeting inflammatory things. Backlash is the key internal link to changing Trump's actions. They say that Twitter got him into power. That's because people were backlashing against the Obama administration era policies. That was because of backlash. So as you have tensions increase and backlash increase against Trump, the only way that that can happen and the only way that you will see changes is through the affirmative use plan, where you let the backlash increase to the point that Trump is then forced to change the way that he thinks about the world and the way that he thinks about policy. Let's go to the line by line on advantage 2. Here's the thing that they overwhelmingly concede that is going to be damning for them in the round, that it almost worked with Michael Flynn. They say here that Neeraj is going to go for this, and that is not true because it obviously didn't work. Here's the issue with this analysis. When Trump said something legally incriminating about Michael Flynn on Twitter and then was able to delete it, that then diffused tensions with people regarding Trump. But his advisors were very, very angry at him. They were like, why did you do this? That's when they implemented the ban on him tweeting for like 2 weeks. But then the people forgot about it. It fell out of the media cycle. People moved on. People weren't saying Trump did something illegal, the Congress should investigate him. So then his advisors backed off from him. His advisors were like, this isn't an issue anymore. This isn't something that we're going to have to be worrying about Congress reviewing him. But if you increase those tensions and make sure that it stays in the media cycle, that CNN is reporting on this, that Fox News is reporting on this for far longer than they ever have before, that is the type of thing that will make his advisors say, Trump, you can't tweet these things, because these things stay around far longer than they have ever before. In the past, we've been able to get away with forgetting how because people forget what you've said in the past. But that is not happening anymore. Because now, instead of just 0.15% of people being able to go on the internet and find your archived tweets, every single person that follows Trump's Twitter account is then aware of what he said and can see it at any given point. That is a significant magnitude of people that are aware of what is happening consistently. That is what generates backlash, and that is what stops Trump from doing things. Now let's go to even more like in the specific line by line. They say that he will be inflammatory no matter what, that Trump is like an inherently angry person, that they have this Congress thing that says that Trump, like no matter what, is going to like be tweeting angry stuff. But the issue is that is in the status quo, where the Presidential Review Act allows him to delete tweets wherever. Additionally, what happens is when he then gets backlash, he's then forced to be more reined in with what he says. His tweets are no longer as inflammatory. They do not piss off North Korea as much. They do not piss voters as much. They do not piss minorities off as much because now there's a much stronger check back.
Also, the important part is that their disadvantage concedes that backlash matters.
Okay, yeah. Additionally, yeah. Okay, let's go on to their what they go for on deletion power and fake news. Here is the huge issue here. We say that policymakers look at this and they never forget. And then they say that the recant is official. Here's the issue with something that they can see. They can see that Trump never apologizes for what he does. He just deletes tweets. If I say something and then say, that doesn't matter anymore, that's different than saying, I take that back, I'm sorry. That's a recantment, saying, I take that back, I'm sorry, apologizing for what you said. But just deleting the tweet is not the type of recantment that these people are looking for. The type of recantment that they're looking for is that apology. That is saying I'm changing my position.
Point of order. I think the analysis out of the second speech is that they view it differently from an apology, but the analysis that they are specifically looking for an apology to literally forget everything is very new within the
I made that exact argument the way Neeraj just presented it in my speech.
Yeah, the argument is that
I have it on my floor right here.
he looks for, Trump never apologized, and the apologies are the important thing that people look for. That's the argument that we make. It's up to Justice Review. That apology is what people are looking for, and that apology is something that never exists. That means that backlash is important. When they can see that backlash is important, and we prove to you through the Michael Flynn example and through the hand thing that I was doing at the beginning of my speech, that proves that backlash, when increased, is really important for reining in the power that Trump has. On fake news. The key piece of analysis that they concede over here is that the group of people that are affected by fake news will be getting fake news no matter what. I follow Trump on my Twitter account, but that doesn't mean that I'm affected by fake news. I'm sure Adam does. I'm sure people that have Twitter do follow President Trump because he's an important, influential figure in American politics. But the type of people that are actually affected by Trump's tweets also follow Alex Jones. They also follow Fox and Friends. They also follow a lot of other right-wingers they'll get the fake news anyways. That means that the fake news argument does not matter. Basically, what it comes down to is that it's a matter of backlash, and which world generates more backlash. And overwhelmingly, the affirmative team's world does. Strongly urge an affirmative ballot. Thank you.